We welcome you all here. We are delighted that in such a great group of people we will reflect together on how to better ensure the safety of our students, and we will exchange experience how to build a positive and safe atmosphere in our Jesuit schools. Our conference is a part of the wider program of support we offer to our schools. In the next step, we plan to organize webinars on child protection issues and prepare a practical publication on the subject. We would also like to create so-called flying experts teams that will support and accompany schools in the safeguarding implementation, but also development.
We are very happy about the interest of participants from 23 countries in this hybrid conference who share an important concern.
Safeguarding and child protection are central for Jesuit education. Without a culture of safeguarding in our schools, we cannot deliver the education of the whole person that we offer. A healthy and safe environment is a condition for human flourishing to occur. Safeguarding is part of the cura personalis, so important and central in our way of proceeding in education. Father Arrupe translated this into our common motto today. Life is only worthy if we become men and women for others. But this invitation will be impossible to be received by students and families in our schools if we do not nurture a culture of respect and safeguarding. Give us your strength to make our schools in Europe and everywhere else safe spaces where our students can discover Jesus, the real person for and with others, in whom we model our education.
And to speak of a change of culture is to make a real qualitative leap. It's about a profound transformation of mentality, of habits, the way we look at each other, even we talk to each other, how we handle respect, how we think about boundaries, authority relationships.
I know our theme is much larger than abuse. It's about safeguarding. It's around safeguarding. And I think it's really important, whilst the abuse issue was a kind of a trigger for us to regain a deeper and fuller consciousness of this core value that we hold. Nonetheless, it was that abuse issue that really got us focused on it and made us recall with a deep reverence what it was that we were in danger of losing. So when we're talking about safeguarding, we're talking about something that's core to Jesuit education. And whilst it's related to the abuses, it's still part of our tradition, regardless of the abuse. It's still something that we have to be attending to all the time. And because of what took place, we're really, really focused in on its importance and on the necessity of preserving it. Of course, something has been lost. Something has been lost. It was certainly for Irish people, and I think wherever this happens, this will be the experience. There was a kind of a loss of innocence for us. We saw ourselves as really good people, good Catholics, trying to educate our children that we loved as best we could. And then to suddenly find that there were these brutes, there were these monsters lurking around the place and doing such damage. That was hard to take. There was also a sense of real sadness for the young people who lost their youth. People who are in schools, who are brutalized, or who throughout their lives developed alcohol problems and emotional problems and failed marriages and so on. A real sadness for those people that they were crippled by the abuses of people who should have known better.
A lo mejor con todas las medidas que estamos empezando a aplicar vamos a disminuir sustancialmente, espero y confío, el abuso sexual. Pero los otros tipos de abuso a lo mejor los estamos permitiendo. No solamente el abuso sexual a los menores, de todos, de cómo yo me estoy comportando con mi compañero. Porque yo creo que si queremos hacer entornos seguros, tenemos que atender a todos los tipos de abusos. Si nos quedamos en el sexual solo, estamos en la punta del iceberg y no vamos a solucionar realmente esto. Tenemos que aprender a cómo hacerlo y a enseñar a que los menores sepan diferenciar lo que es un buen trato de lo que es un abuso. Hay que cambiar la cultura. Cambiar la cultura lleva años. Y para aprender a cambiar la cultura se necesita, primero, dejarme tocar por esta realidad, garantizar que destinamos recursos a esto, impartir formación es fundamental, ¿no? Y no solamente a los profesionales, sino también a los chavales, como decía antes Brian, tenemos que empoderar a esas nuevas generaciones. O cambiamos todos o esto no se cambia. Si hay una conversión, y lo hemos mencionado también varios, conversión personal primero e institucional. Y solamente desde ese convencimiento, desde esa conversión, esto lo vamos a cambiar.
Many colleagues resist the topic of child protection with the argument we don't let ourselves be placed under general suspicion. This topic is unsettling. It is therefore helpful to work out the focus of the question. Many processes have failed in recent years because, at their core, they were not primarily motivated from the victim's perspective, but from the image interests of the institution. I think the role question is one of the main questions. How do we integrate the victims, the survivors? How do we integrate them? By being clear in the responsibilities and remaining clear in the responsibilities. The victims do not have any responsibility for the institution.
Kann ich sexuelle Gewalt als Kirche begleiten oder als Schule? Nein, ich muss sie stoppen. Ich muss sie unterbinden. Ja? Das heißt, man hat eine medizinische Definition von einer Krankheit, wo es notwendig ist, Krankheiten, die ich nicht heilen kann, zu begleiten, auf die Institution Kirche übertragen. Und das steht in allen Schutzkonzepten durchdekliniert rum. Und die Kirche stellt sich stolz hin, wir machen Prävention und wir sind der Vorreiter in Deutschland. Aber man hat nicht verstanden, dass ich Missbrauch nicht begleiten kann. Ich muss Missbrauch beenden. Ich brauche eine Verantwortungsübernahme. Ich brauche Garantenpflichten. Sage ich als Präventionswissenschaftler, ich leite einen Kompetenzbereich Prävention für das Land Baden-Württemberg. Wir brauchen eine inhaltliche Diskussion über Prävention in der Kirche mit wissenschaftlichen Kriterien. Wir brauchen auch eine Überprüfung der Ergebnisse. Oder wie wir im Deutschen sagen, gut gemeint ist noch lange nicht gut gemacht. Und es ist wirklich gut gemeint. Aber oft wird es zum Alibi, wenn es nicht wirklich umgesetzt wird. Also Schule und Hort brauchen ein unterstützendes Milieu. Sie sind nicht der Ort für therapeutisches Arbeiten. Das machen andere und machen das in einer geschützten. Und in der Schule haben wir zum Beispiel auch die Peer-Gewalt als Gewaltform, die wir berücksichtigen müssen. Und wenn wir fragen, ist in der Schule, im Sportverein oder so irgendwann mal mit Ihnen darüber gesprochen worden, über den Schutz der Kinder, dann sagen auch 70% Nein. Und das ist ein Skandal, den wir verändern müssen. Und wenn wir fragen, ist das richtig, dass das in der Schule angegangen wird, dann sagen sogar 90% der Eltern, über sexuellen Missbrauch möchte ich, dass in der Schule gesprochen wird. Gerade auch über Sexualpädagogik angesichts der ganzen Gefahren im Internet. Also hier haben Sie einen Auftrag, auch eine Medienpädagogik, eine Sexualpädagogik zu entwickeln, in Bezug auf Online-Grooming, in Bezug auf Sexting, was unter Jugendlichen sehr häufig stattfindet. Also dass man in der ersten Verliebtheit voneinander Nacktfotos, Filme oder Schlimmeres macht und die, wenn man sich danach 3 Wochen später trennt, plötzlich im Schulverteiler postet, was uns eigentlich zurzeit jeden Monat Suizidversuche von eigentlich psychisch ganz stabilen, gesunden Mädchen einbringt, die sich so beschämt fühlen.
The very important point I want to make is when we talk about education, when we talk about if you still want to talk about prevention, but if we talk about prevention, also if we talk about intervention, we need to take into consideration the digital dimension. If we don't do that, even if you have safeguarding concepts, if your safeguarding concepts do not entail the digital realm of reality, then they're missing a huge part of a reality of what your children and adolescents are dealing with. Now, today, when I'm home with my children and they're in their children's rooms, I don't know if everything's okay, because I don't know what's happening right here. Now, what do I tell parents then, or even headmasters of boarding schools? Do I tell you guys to barge in the room every 45 seconds and say, "Let me look at your screen"? Do I tell you to talk about it with your children every half an hour? Do I tell you to install spy software on all digital devices of your children? It's really difficult. So again, digital media has been a huge game changer. And that also, this is a game changer for the whole society. Everybody uses digital media. Offenders use digital media regardless of where they come from, even if they come from the Catholic or Protestant church. So child abusive images produced within live stream sexual abuse overall made 44% of all reported cases of child sexual abuse images in 2020. So almost half of the cases were cases that took place by means of digital media. That was a 77% increase in comparison to 2019. We are responsible for the protection of children, not children themselves, and not even adolescents themselves. Regardless, be it online or offline, it's our job to protect children. It's our job to end child sexual abuse, and it's our job to make sure that survivors, as well as offenders, but survivors are getting the treatment and the help that they need. So we need to enable ourselves to detect potential victims and to detect potential offenders. And detecting potential offenders is most likely the more difficult undertaking, I take it.
Geistlicher Missbrauch, spiritueller Missbrauch ist nicht Spiritualität. Genauso wenig wie sexuelle Übergriffe etwas mit Sexualität im engeren Sinne zu tun haben, hat auch geistlicher Missbrauch nichts mit geistlichem Leben zu tun. Geistlicher Missbrauch ist Machtmissbrauch. Ist Machtmissbrauch, der durch spirituelle Worte, spirituelle Inszenierungen, geistliche Riten oder was auch immer vernebelt wird, sodass man den Machtmissbrauch nicht mehr sieht. Konstrukt, das sorgfältig vorbereitet wird und das zugleich dazu dient, andere Formen von Missbrauch vorzubereiten, bis hin eben zu sexueller Gewalt. Der geistliche Missbrauch ist der Missbrauch, der sich, wenn man genau hinschaut, häufig hinter den anderen Formen des Missbrauchs auftut, und die Dimension ist noch einmal um einen Faktor größer als die schockierenden Zahlen von Professor Fegert. Diese Autorität, die ihnen zugeschrieben wird, nutzen, um ihre eigenen Zwecke zu verfolgen. Das ist derselbe Mechanismus wie bei sexuellem Missbrauch. Und dabei verwischen sie die Grenze zwischen sich selbst und Gott. Nichts weniger. Sie machen sich selbst zum Sprachrohr des Willens Gottes, zum Sprachrohr Gottes selbst und sorgen dafür oder lassen andere es dafür tun, dass diese beiden Stimmen nicht mehr unterschieden werden können. Die Manipulation greift so tief, dass egal wie intelligent und erwachsen und mündig jemand ist, er keine Chance mehr hat, von innen die Manipulation zu durchschauen.
First of all, perpetrators in the large majority are male, around 10 to 15% are female. And also important to know that about a quarter of perpetrators, according to the criminal statistics, are minors under the age of 18. And this is what I was saying before, the peer element here, the peer issues of sexualized violence, and how are you in your schools also looking at these parts? Because oftentimes we think of the adults, we think of the asymmetrical power relations, but even among peer groups, there are different power relations which are active there. And studies have also shown that young people tell up to 7 adults that they have problems in the area of sexualized violence before they receive help, before people, can really react and provide them with help. And our main experience is that the messages may not be clear and they may be rather diffuse. There may be somebody saying, well, because they will not say, hello, I'm a student in your class, you are my teacher, I have been sexually abused. I've never heard of this kind of disclosure. But rather they will tell certain diffuse things. They will say they're not feeling well, things are not going well. It will be not a very clear situation. And then is the question, how do we react? And how can we provide the space of more trust for them to disclose more of what they really want to speak about, what they really mean, because they are testing us. So the parents are oftentimes one of the hardest first people to speak to. It doesn't have to be that way. There's, maybe they will speak with their parents, and we always hope so, but to know that you in your schools may be exactly those kinds of people of trust because you're outside of this close crisis center which they may be involved in. Perpetrators use strategies, whether they use them very consciously or less consciously, but there is a certain strategy which is there because sexualized violence is planned, and it is planned continuously, all the time. Perpetrators are in this continuous mode of planning, of looking how they will continue. When the sexualized violence happens, it is usually in time frames, very short moments, where they have the secrets, where they have the intimacy, and they do that also by being in constant phone contact, social media at all times of the day. Many of the youth that we worked with, they said, yes, it was a constant barrage of these messages several times a day to make sure that this pressure was kept up, that they didn't get out of this social atmosphere of the perpetrators. That these perpetrator strategies are large or continuous feelings of shame and guilt because they put the blame on themselves and they say, it's my fault, and they feel this very large shame, and that is one of the big reasons why it's so difficult for young people to speak to us as adults, because they feel that they have made mistakes, they feel they have done something wrong, and there's this sense of shame. And some of the also effects are the changes in behavior. For example, people who are, as young people, very perhaps lively, open, may withdraw, they may become very aggressive, they may have stronger emotions which they are dealing with inside, which they're trying not to show to the outside. All of the young boys and young men we worked with, they all said, all I want is a normal life. I want this thing to just be behind me, be in the past. I want a normal life, and I want everybody to think of me as normal. I don't want anybody to think of me as a victim. And this is one of the big points, is also a damage of trust in other people. Something that we hear all the time, people say, well, I cannot trust people, and the closer they come to me, the more dangerous it becomes. I think we're still at the beginning of our professionalization in dealing with this topic. We have come a certain part of the way, but we are definitely not at the end, is my perspective on it. We are somewhere in the middle, and perhaps in the beginning of the middle of working on professionalizing all of ourselves. I'm learning all the time about this topic, and I hope we all are. There has to be knowledge of what are the ways of reporting, what are the ways of documentation, who are the institutionally responsible people, and to know who will be investigating the case, who will be making the decisions, to have these types of procedures on a repeated basis, making that clear. Communicating on this subject continuously. Such a conference like this, I think, is a great opportunity to say, I just came from a conference, these were the things. How will you be communicating that into your schools? How will you be passing on? And not to do, I'll give one talk to all of my colleagues, but think maybe of a plan over the next year. How would you be doing that? How would you be bringing part of these messages of what you think are the most next steps back into your schools? And networking with other safeguarding professionals. You have good networks here in your different local areas, perhaps in your countries, to see who are the professionals that we can network with beforehand, so I'll know which numbers I need to call, perhaps when we need them. Because these well-used and lived procedures are our safeguarding. And so what is the goal is to seek a higher level of professionalizations, of clarity, of actually living the culture of safeguarding inside the institution, which means also setting certain boundaries, which means saying, this is your job description, this is not.
But only a cultural change opens the institution, and especially the pedagogical staff, to the concerns of violence, intervention and prevention. You know, in the gospel, Jesus says in the prophetic tradition, they have eyes and do not see. And it is overcoming in the culture this blindness. Jesus says they have, all of them are blind. And you have to change the culture that all can see or become able to see. I overcome my blindness when I take seriously what I see. We have to start with the things we see. And then perhaps I will also see what I do not see. This is the paradox. So first reaction in my institution is, what do I see? Where is the violence I see? Damage to trust has negative consequences for the self-image and the understanding of values. With trust in the leadership, the person in the institution lose the trust in the values, because the leadership does not stand up for the values in case of conflict. They speak a lot about the values, but they do not stand up. And this is the problem. So it's about exercising leadership power in such a way that in the process the people who generate fear and who rule in the informal discourse are pushed to side.
The title, Promoting a Culture of Protection, a Consistent Culture of Protection, says a lot. I sometimes prefer talking about a culture of care. I think care is a much more generic term. And that is the continual invitation to the Ignatian family. In your language of Magis, it's promoting a culture of integrity. It's promoting a culture of listening to one another. It's promoting a culture of well-being, which is a great generic word for, how people are at, how people relate to one another. Am I well in this school? Do I feel good in this school? And above all, to ask the question, is my school a happy school? Is it a happy place to work in? If it's a happy place for you, it surely will be a happy place for the kids. The promotion of a consistent culture of protection. Safeguarding as from a matter of just being discussed, to be discussed by the society or by Father General, to the core mission, to the core decree of justice and reconciliation. It is now the mission of the society. It is part and parcel of our mission to do UAP2.
And this amazing statement that the Society of Jesus has made in this preference. We commit ourselves to eliminate abuse inside and outside the church, seeking to ensure that victims are heard and properly helped, that justice is done, and that harm is healed. And this commitment, goes on to say, includes the adoption of clear policies for the prevention of abuse, the ongoing formation of those who are committed to mission, and serious efforts to identify the social origins of abuse, to recognize our concern, to recognize the damage done. It's not a choice between tea and coffee. It's not a fad. It's not fashionable. It's something that's core to our mission. And if we say we're a Jesuit institution, we're a Jesuit work, this is core to our work, whether I'm in a retreat center or in a school or in a social center. Safeguarding can never be reduced to case management. That we need to act, in fact, in relation to how we walk with victims, puts victims at the center of our concern. We really need to act in relation to prevention and also creating safe places. But prevention is learning and reclaiming our past and saying, in our institutions, we will do everything possible never to have a child abused under our care. That is our commitment, to eliminate abuse. That is what we are committing ourselves to. Here was a woman who taught me how to identify abuse, but also to intervene. She recognized that this was a justice issue. And ever since, I must say, in the whole area of safeguarding, I have been educated by women. And I'd like to say that the role of women and the active participation of women in this ministry, as well as all other ministries in the church, is essential. Because sometimes we men don't get it. We priests don't get it. We Jesuits don't get it. Sometimes we push it aside. We have more urgent matters to deal with. The role of women is wonderful to see the women here who are part of this safeguarding ministry, the mission of the society, because it is essential. Your perspective is essential in reformation and change in the church.
Mi sentimiento ahora es de orgullo por pertenecer a una institución, la Compañía de Jesús, que trabaja en este sentido, que ha pedido perdón cuando ha sido necesario pedir perdón, que ha sabido reflexionar, que ha sabido escuchar con una escucha activa, como nos decían, una escucha que las personas afectadas ven como muy cercana y posibilitan que puedan sacar sus demonios muchas veces de muchos años internos. Hemos trabajado para la prevención, estamos trabajando para la reconciliación. Es verdad que hay una cierta presión social también, pero es verdad que la Compañía de Jesús ha querido trabajar este tema, pedir perdón y ha querido tener una prevención muy seria, una prevención muy en la línea que se nos pide. Desde un proceso participativo de reflexión pedagógica se fue perfilando un modelo propio que comprende la transformación pedagógica, pero también la transformación de los espacios, la transformación de la formación permanente, etc. Se lleva a cabo en varias fases, con experiencias piloto en diferentes escuelas y etapas, en un proceso que requiere mucho acompañamiento y formación, comunicación interna y externa, y una compleja red que dificulta y a la vez nos hace ser también mucho más efectivo. En estos momentos el modelo se centra en una cultura de la transformación desde la misión educativa que nos es propia a los jesuitas e incidiendo especialmente en los rasgos que identifican la espiritualidad y la pedagogía ignaciana para el siglo XX.
Culturas políticas y prácticas que constituyen una educación evangelizadora. Esto lo decimos a las familias, ¿no? Les ofrecemos una educación evangelizadora. ¿Qué significa esto? Pues una educación que permita abrirse a lo trascendente, que sea profunda, hemos hablado de la profundidad como elemento clave, lo ha mencionado Heinrich, y a su vez innovadora y transformadora, que permita experiencias de conversión.
El acompañamiento es clave para el crecimiento emocional, espiritual, intelectual, para la maduración, también para la orientación personal, con el objetivo concreto de saber vivir profundamente en libertad y convivir en una sociedad democrática, plural, justa, equitativa.
Conclusion of the conference, among others. We need to consequently shape a culture based on a deep respect of human dignity. The focus is on cura personalis at the core of Jesuit education. A culture of dialogue, transparency and involvement of children and young people is needed. Now there's a lot of information, ideas and tools for implementation and further development.
Schools and countries that have taken safeguarding seriously are doing important things. First, they assess the risks. Second, they implement mechanisms for prevention like protocols and ongoing formation. They also implement adequate mechanisms for dealing with complaints, accusations, they accompany victims, and they also work closely with professionals and institutions that have expertise in this area. And they are always willing to respond to the new context like cyberbullying. That is what we need to do, to adapt, to respond, to make sure that safeguarding is a precondition for real Jesuit education to happen.